Today I have my colleagues Malika Shani Coker, founder and principal of Ignited Word, and Abby Cohen, a monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning consultant, who will be joining me also for today's conversation on generative AI. First, we'll be delving into generative AI as a brainstorming partner. But before we get started, Malika and Abby, y'all want to say hello?
Hi, good
Hi.
morning.
Yes, good morning. Nice to be doing this.
Nice. So thank you both for joining us today. Gen AI was originally focused on boosting productivity, but it is now making waves in the realm of creative ideation. At Ignited Word, we use a lot of Gen AI and tools in our own work, and recently we launched our Creative Sparks workshop and have spent months developing and beta testing it with organizations. We also recently launched our Creative Thorny Problem Contest, and we'll be announcing the winner soon. So, Malika, this first question is for you. What prompted us to create the Creative Sparks workshop?
Well, thank you, Darnisha, for that question. A number of things I would say. I would say that, for one, just the fact that Gen AI is now with us in the workplace and the technology had been developing so rapidly. And when I say I should maybe set the timeline, which is at least 6 months ago when we started really delving into the process and deciding to do this. So Gen AI was with us in organizations, large and small. We're trying to figure out how to integrate it, how to use it, and people in general were playing around with ChatGPT and different Gen AI tools. So there was that we, like everybody else, were trying to figure out how to harness the technology and also how to weave it into services for other organizations that we could offer them, but also because we are creativity focused, and it was clear off the bat that Gen AI brings these new creative, or it goes into the realm of what would be considered creativity in the way that previous AI technologies weren't. We saw this opportunity to really hone in on the more ideation friendly or creativity boosting or creativity serving aspects of the technology and package that into a workshop.
Nice. And I know we've been beta testing the workshop together, but Abby, I know you were originally spearheading like a lot of the process of, what the Creative Sparks workshop would look like when we presented it to organizations. Could you talk a bit about your process?
Yeah, for sure. So it obviously started off with like doing our own research into what tools are out there. And so that was a big phase in itself. And then we kind of, well, at least I'll say also I started with this urge to kind of have this formulaic response to like, okay, so you show participants of the workshop how to use this tool, and then you move to the next thing. And I think we quickly realized that the type of workshop that this is supposed to be is not supposed to be so cut and dry. It's not, we compare it to jazz music rather than classical music in the sense that there's still structure, but it's more responsive and less kind of yeah, like formulaic, as I said, going like that. And as we learn more about the tools and we kind of ironed out this approach of being more responsive with participants and kind of having it be a true workshop rather than a lecture, that's kind of where it really started to take off.
Nice. Yeah. And just to echo that, I definitely hear you on like, the testing and making it more of like a conversation instead of like a lecture with organizations. And I think that we learned that through the beta testing with the different workshops. I know, Malika, you were also in on those workshops as well, and you brought in some new techniques into the Creative Sparks workshop. Could you share a bit about that and what you learned?
Sure. So there have been ideation techniques for decades that have been successfully used to get groups of people to go through a process of brainstorming, to go through a process of mental and imaginative discovery. So there's nothing new per se to the techniques that we have brought. There are many different ones, and we ourselves have invented some, but you can think about it. One of the techniques, for example, that we use is a very classic process of um, starting with a wide funnel, and generating ideas without inhibition and then starting to narrow down. Another set of techniques that we use, maybe less familiar, is to start with a sequence of questions. They're why, what if, and how questions. The techniques are there. There's obviously they're in it's not necessarily just take the technique and take it out of the box and apply it. You have to use skill, like knowing which techniques to use, and sometimes mix techniques, and sometimes change techniques up on the spot. But those are some of the pre-existing techniques that we have brought into the Gen AI workshop process to optimize the human ideation aspect of it, to then help get the most out of the part where we turn to AI to supplement the process and sort of bring in an infusion of ideas that have not necessarily come out of the human ideation process.
Great. Yeah. No, I think the way we brought in those processes are really great because Gen AI is an amazing tool, but it does not beat the human brain, which we try to really push here always at Ignited Word. And Abby, you spoke about this a bit, about different tools that we've researched, to really infuse into the workshop. And I was wondering if you could provide some examples of how we're using AI in our own work as a thought partner.
Yeah, we oftentimes kind of in our own internal brainstorming sessions, as you know, Darnisha, we like to bounce ideas back and forth off of each other. And then when we realize we're hitting a wall, that's when we take it to AI into some of the tools that we're talking about. We love using it to help us build out metaphors, to think about kind of to turn problems upside down and look at them from a different angle. Oftentimes, I think it's really tempting to get stuck in the same thought pattern. So that's what AI is great at in terms of just kind of jolting and giving you a spark. But um, I will say though, like you were saying, like you were kind of getting at, it's the human ideation always needs to come first.
Yes. Human ideation always first. Yeah, I enjoy our brainstorming sessions when we, can, as Malika, as you highlighted, start off with a series of questions of what we want to get to, or even start off wide and really narrowing our scope and then bringing in the AI tool. I know those are lessons that we carry through our work, but could either of you share, excuse me, some key lessons that you want the listeners to take away as they start to interact with AI tools?
I would say that it takes a lot of experimentation, and oftentimes you won't necessarily get the results that you were hoping for from the first try. The results might be mediocre. The technology may have misunderstood the question, or at least what your intent behind the question was. And we, I believe, have learned through practice and through some study of what's working and what's not working to, as we say, dialogue with the tools, refine prompts, sometimes break a very big prompt into a smaller piece or tweak a prompt. Um, Another trick I would say we've learned is, in addition to like dialoguing and sort of back and forth with a specific tool, is sometimes to try different tools. And that's one thing we definitely do in the workshop, is explore a range of tools because they have different models behind them, and different algorithms. And sometimes we'll get one kind of answer from one tool and a different kind from another. And the variety can, to the same question, I should say, and the variety can be really helpful, in terms of that diversity can give you more options and better help you answer your question.
Yes. Anything to add on to that, Abby?
Um, no, I think what Malika is getting at in terms of like being patient, like trusting the learning curve also with things. Um, and yeah, I would say don't underestimate the help and support that AI can provide in terms of not just like being efficient with things, because I think that's like kind of the common narrative right now. It's like, let's ask ChatGPT to write my memo. And more so, we're really starting to tap into this like ability to help us boost our own creativity. So just kind of looking at thinking about all of the ways in which AI can like be embedded into your work. Like we said, not to take the place of our human brain, but to bolster it.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
Abby's comment made me think of one more thing, which is that really one of the most powerful uses is to sort of like test what's possible, not necessarily to go to it with a problem to problem solve or get ideas on how to problem solve, but like to kind of be a sparring partner almost in challenging yourself to think about new ways of doing things or new possibilities or new opportunities. And sometimes by just seeing if others have done something similar, it can give you that confidence of, oh, wow, there's something in that vein, or there's something not quite like this that gives me the inspiration to then venture out and do something. So it really is very true to things that helpful to things that we at Ignited Word are very passionate about, which is the human capacity to imagine and the need to support the imagination.
Nice. Yeah. I think that's an excellent point, like of how, Gen AI can really be a tool to boost our own creativity as humans. And I know a few weeks ago we released a blog on that dialogue piece that you brought up of really when you're engaging with AI we got to keep it as a conversation to really challenge us to get to that innovation and that new ideas and imagining that you were mentioning. I'll be sure to link your blog in the show notes so that the listeners can take a look after they listen to the rest of this podcast. So next, I really want to dive into ethical considerations. I know when folks hear Gen AI, sometimes there's a pause around, is Gen AI going to take over the world? The honest truth is we don't know yet, but we just have to engage thoughtfully. So I want to get both of you all's viewpoints on, what are some ethical considerations that listeners might want to take into account as they start to engage or continue to engage with Gen AI?
Yeah, I'll jump in. And just first say that, you know, like you're getting at, Darnisha, these ethical considerations and like these kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Being hesitant about AI, I think is very valid, but I still think we should be like kind of embracing the technology and kind of learning as it's rolling out, and doing so in an ethical way, and mindful. So I would say one of the first things that comes to my mind is issues relating to equity and the fact that these generative AI tools are built on human ways of thinking, which are flawed. And it's also built and they've been fed knowledge um, of inequitable systems. So there is a lot of discussion surrounding that in sense of in terms of is AI going to continue to perpetuate issues of inequity and the way we think about certain issues? So that's something to think about as well. And I would say another thing to think about, especially when you're doing text to image AI, is to go for AI technology that is giving credit to artists and has those kind of safeguarding measures in place. So we're not like kind of going into the realm of copyright infringement. But I'll stop there, and I'm wondering if Malika, you have any other things to add.
Not much to add. You covered it well, Abby. I would say that I see less. I do see a lot more about some of the bias issues associated with the use of Gen AI. Of course, there are environmental issues. There's a huge environmental cost of the technology and the energy behind running Gen AI, energy usage rather. Um, I think the second point Abby made about um, image generation also applies more broadly to different AI tools that have been trained on people's creative content and creative labor without their consent. It's a really tough double-edged sword of the technology. We, as a creativity-focused forum, revere the creative process and know the sweat also behind bringing creativity to life. And so it's definitely something that I think we as individuals are a little bit till some of these lawsuits play out and regulations get tighter around the use of holding companies to account as they develop their AI. I think as individuals and organizations, it does require some extra legwork to do some research on, oh, this tool, what steps have they taken to use to not infringe on copyright, for example, in the material that they use to train um, their language models. A task that's easier said than done, but I think it does behoove each of us to do what research we can and try to make more conscientious choices where we can.
Yes. Yeah, I think that you all both raised some excellent points there. And, these technologies are being developed so fast. So it's really important that we be mindful of, copyright and giving artists, making sure that artists get their credit as, these tools are being built out. And I know we've also developed, some guidelines for engaging with Gen AI, which I'll be sure to link in the show notes as well, so folks can take a look at after they're done listening to this episode. So, a really big theme that has come out of this conversation is, the human brain should be used first and then using Gen AI and companionship, like as a dialogue partner to really boost our innovation. But before we wrap up today, I just wanted to know if you all have, one key strategy that you want listeners to take away when they listen to this episode.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I would say don't be afraid to use AI when, especially when you and your team are sorting through a particularly challenging problem. Use your brain first and then see what AI has for you. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, but that brain first step is very important.
Yes. Human brain first, AI second. I hear that, Abby.
Yeah.
Over to you, Malika. Anything to add?
I would say to infuse an element of playfulness and curiosity and experimentation around it. Play around with image generators and give them wacky prompts or not so wacky prompts. We know increasingly from research and anecdotal um, experience that the human brain works best when it has breaks, even if they're mini breaks to just play or be thinking about some or daydream or whatever. And creativity also works best that way. And just because it's called work doesn't mean that you don't need to inject some unstructured or just playful time into it to really essentially optimize your productivity at the end of the day, but also just to have fun and make the work life more well-rounded. So that's
No, I think that's great. Thanks, Malika. Definitely want to make sure, as we're engaging with these tools, we're making it an enjoyable process as well, because this new technology is fun. And to the listeners, just want to let you all know again, we do have our Creative Sparks workshop where we can walk you through the ideation process and bringing AI tools into your brainstorming process to really tackle difficult problems that your organizations may be facing. Before we wrap today, anything else to add, Malika or Abby?
No, no, this was great, Dar.
yeah. Thanks for hosting us, Darnisha.
Thanks. All right. Thank you for listening in today. Take a moment to leave your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think about Gen AI being used in the social sector? How are you already using Gen AI in your own work? We here at Ignited Word are really interested to hear what you think. All right, thanks again for tuning in, and look out for more from Ignited Conversations.